What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Chad Hason of Agency Atlas. You can check him out at agencyatlas.ca. And Chad, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, I had Jason Swank on. Jason, you've heard me talk about him before. He started an agency, built it to 8 figures, then sold it, and then he started buying up agencies, and he runs a group of agency owners that mastermind together to help each other out, Agency 360. There's another good one, Chad, I'd iron garlic on. He runs videocasestory.com. He really only specializes in collecting customer stories for companies, right? So they hire him, goes in, creates a nice customer story, case study. He talked about growing up in an entrepreneurial family. His dad had a restaurant and they had live dolphins in the restaurant, which was kind of strange in itself. I got the creative juices flowing, but their restaurant, he lives in Orlando now, was in Milwaukee of all places. So imagine going in a restaurant and having live dolphins in Milwaukee. It's pretty interesting. And then Adee Clevitt was another good one. She focuses on SOPs for companies, done for you SOPs, all the non-sexy stuff that makes things run properly. She goes in. We geeked out on our favorite productivity software, tools, and all that stuff. So check those out and more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships, partnerships. We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So kind of, Chad, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, and most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Chad Hason. He's founder of Agency Atlas. He's been working, I won't age you at all, Chad, but working in agencies for a long time, but he's had his own agency for over a decade. Really they take an approach to full service, strategic, and innovative marketing solutions. They have clients from cannabis to vodka companies to IT to energy and many, many more. He's been doing this a long time. Chad, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
And he's got, if you're watching the video, he's got a pin for every occasion. So maybe we'll talk about that too. But just start off and tell us about Agency Atlas and what you do.
Sure. So Agency Atlas is a mid-sized full-service strategic agency. We have everything from marketing to communications to advertising. We build tech and SaaS. We develop websites, but primarily we're here to tell stories. So we'll typically, you made mention to all the different industries that we touch on. The one unifying factor for all of those is they had an interesting story to tell. I've spent the last 25 years in brand and brand strategy. So everything we do is driven by that initial understanding of what they're trying to accomplish and what makes them different. But we're also pretty talented on the creative side. And we feel like those are two sides of the coin of what most people want from their marketing agency.
I know you worked for other agencies in the past before you started your own. So I'm curious, we'll get into how you do things differently, but what did you learn from some of those other agencies that you worked in?
Yeah, well, when I started in marketing, I actually graduated with a public relations degree and did some PR and events. But in one of the companies I was at, they went through a major rebrand. And I thoroughly enjoyed the process. I thought it was awesome. And I felt like I had a little bit of ability in that regard. So after my first marriage, When we separated, I moved to Argentina, and I spent a year trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And I decided that most recent experience of brand was a wonderful fit for me, and it appeared to have a lot of future for it. So when I came back, I started working in-house in agencies. I got hired locally here in Calgary for an up-and-coming agency with some big clients, Honda Canada being one of them. And so I got a bit of a crash course over about a 5-year period. But I also got a crash course on everything I did not like about big agencies.
Like,
The reality, well, you talk about scaling from 7 to 8 figures, which is, a challenge, but it also comes with the need to hire a lot more people. And I find that the talent pool in the biggest agencies typically get diluted. It gets very difficult to properly manage and be available and accountable to a list of 200, 300 clients. And I also found that things that I thought should be part of the business development and relationship building process, like telling them about strategy, learning about their brand, figuring out if we're even a good fit for each other, shouldn't cost upwards of 30, 40 grand just to get in the door. So I left after about 5 years, and I started a sole proprietorship, which I was a brand strategist. And then I started meeting a lot of agencies in town, because inevitably when I was done my strategy, I had to hand that strategy over to the designers and developers that could execute on it, advertisers and such. So that's what I did for about 10 years. And then finally decided that sending all this extra work out the door after I had done all the hard work and selling just for them to get, monthly retainers for a few years executing what I planned was really leaving a lot of money on the table. So I reached out to some of my most trusted partners, designers, developers, advertisers, copywriters, and said, hey, do you guys want to form a company that can be, exactly what we want, exactly how we work now, but in a way that allows us to keep everything kind of in-house? And every single person I approached agreed. So we created Agency Atlas, and it's been going pretty good.
I want to hit on a few points that you bring up there. One is, I want to talk about how you did things differently for this compared to the other agency, but you're a brand strategist, and in strategy, I totally agree. Like, the most important thing, we talk about this too, is the strategy, right? And if you have the wrong strategy, you can execute on the wrong things for a long time. It's not going to, result in ROI or whatever the result is for that company. How was the structure with your partners, right? Because part of me sees, okay, that's smart. I mean, he's really the expert in the strategy. He could bring on these partners. Were you just referring it? Was there some kind of like partner commission that the companies would typically give you? Because I can be like, listen, I don't want to deal with all this other headache. Just give me some kind of referral commission. I'll keep referring them over to you, right? So how did you and maybe all the deals are kind of different with the different partners, but how should someone be thinking about when they're structuring, partnerships with people? What worked, maybe what didn't work?
Yeah, well, I like to provide some security for talented people, and then inspire them to win with me. So we have several things. First of all, when we joined, out of the 4 people that came together, only one really had interest in business ownership. He is currently my partner, although I am the majority owner and director. And the rest of them really came to me saying, it's been hard. I understand coming, through COVID and all that, there's a lot of insecurities with contractors and businesses of all shapes and sizes. The ability for me to pay them a salary that they could rely on, and then incentivize them for exactly what you said. Hey, you've got contact. If you bring in a client, then we provide you with payment for that referral, over the course of the first few months of having that client. As well, profit sharing is something that we've started to introduce. So in the first few years, we did bonuses. But now that we're getting a little bit bigger and our processes are getting a little bit tighter, all of our employees are connected to a profit sharing. Whether you are the most new and most junior or the most senior, we connect everything that you do to success that can be measured. Everything from billable hours to attitude to employee or client feedback. And that all feeds into a profit sharing model that we're actually launching in 2025, which keeps everybody motivated. The reality is I'm not a big business. I bootstrapped this. I went into, as any new business owner will tell you that isn't, sons of a multimillionaire, I went into significant debt to get this out. I've been very transparent with my team. They understand exactly where the money is and how much comes in. They understand that I'm not saving for my second beach home or my third Bentley. And we all rise together. So I've found that that's the best way to keep talented people motivated and happy. And that's been my model.
Talk about the profit sharing, because I know before we hit record, you've thought long and hard about this, and you mentioned a few of them, but what are some of the factors that go into this? You mentioned hours, attitude. What are the other factors that you're thinking about when you constructed this profit sharing?
Well, the factor that I thought about was, how do I motivate for success that doesn't just come out of my pocket right out of the way? I've had enough experience in business to know that giving somebody a huge bag of money right up front is not a motivator. It might be a reward for them to come over to you from somewhere else, or to inspire to come join you in the first place. But the real motivators are a reflection of the successes that you have. It took us a while to figure out the metrics and measurements. But again, if I have an employee that I'm paying, let's say $100K to, plus their benefits, plus their share of the rent, plus the snacks, plus the parties, plus everything, that number isn't $100K. It's more like $150K. And when you realize that, you have to work backwards to explain to them, if I'm going to pay you $150K, I'm not running a charity. I need to make, standard businesses to make at least double that off of you. I can show them what we build them. I can fill their plate with hours. And if they're able to deliver at a standard that allows me to achieve my goals, well, then I share those profits with them. So they're not lazy. And again, if I do have some employees that they just want to come in, they love the fact that it's flexible. They can work from home, they can work here. They deliver the standard of hours that's been expected of them, and a little bit extra, but they're not looking to make a ton of extra money or really, grow in the company. They're, a designer or a copywriter that's building a family and just kind of has something on the side, and they don't even know how much longer they're going to be working. So we're comfortable for them as well, but we recognize the people that also want to learn here. So the profit sharing model allows them to learn a business, understand what goes into it behind the scenes. And it really takes away a lot of the, woe is me, why am I not making more money? I firmly believe that leaders eat last, and that transparency allows them to show exactly what's left over at the end of the day, but also a path for how they can get more money. So that's been my approach. And to be very fair, I got this off a book that I read a little while ago that another agency owner told me to read. I was just incredibly inspired by it. So this isn't new. And I want to be fair. It's not a model that's been working for 10 years and kicking butt, but in the interest of our culture, I think it's a wonderful fit.
Talk about, what was the book, and are there any other books that you recommend from
Sure.
business perspective?
So the book, The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, is the book that I wrote that really kind of breaks this down. Again, this has been around for decades. It's not anything new, but
it's a great book. Yeah. I think you could even go, and I think you could even go to one of their meetings. I think he said in the book, if you go, they have like an all hands meeting where they share everything. I think you can actually go to that from their company. I don't know if that's still
I saw that
in existence.
I mean, it's the fourth edition of the book, so I'm not sure if that's current, but yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
So Great Game of Business, fantastic. What other ones throughout your business career have been helpful for you?
Oh man, I read a book called Wait that really affected me. There's another, and basically the concept of it was just, it really drilled down into athletes and how, like a tennis player or a baseball player, two of the hardest things to do is connect on those 100-mile-an-hour balls spinning in whatever direction coming at you. And what really differentiates the winners from the failures is that ability to wait that extra little minuscule amount of time to deliver properly. The biggest failures I've had as a leader are reacting emotionally, reacting too quickly. Part of my strength, I feel, or what people appreciate about me, is my availability and my quick responses. But there's a time and place for that. And making big decisions, certainly ones that affect, 15, 20 of your employees, is not something that you should take lightly. So it really taught me to take a minute and calm down. And then
Is that one
There
Wait?
was
Is it called The Art and Science of Delay? Is that the right one?
It is. Yeah.
Okay,
I think there's a
cool.
dog on the front even. Like
Yes.
it's wonderful.
Yep, love it.
Yeah.
Frank
Yeah.
Partnoy is the author. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
And then I read another one. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell a little bit. And the name of it, I have to look on the shelf here, the name of it. But it was basically
I know there's
how to,
Blink. He's got David
oh,
and Goliath, and
no, it was about meeting a bunch of people that you're going to think are stupid because they communicate in a different way than you do. And so it really broke down, and we've all been through the Myers-Briggs and like
Outliers,
all these things.
Talking to Strangers. Talking to Strangers.
Talking to strangers,
Okay,
talking to strangers. Yeah, I
got it.
really like that. So I'm in the communication business, but just like any other married man, I have trouble with communication at home and with my wife or with my children or, with my,
Right.
well, let's make it a little bit topical with my Trump followers versus my Kamala followers. Like you got to kind of adjust how you communicate with people in the interest of getting anywhere. And it can't just be yelling louder or driving your point home in the way that you do it. So I'm in business development. I'm in management of people. The ability for me to truly understand that just because they don't communicate like you do doesn't mean they don't have huge value to contribute to your team, even in leadership. So it breaks it down into four. I was able to identify who I was. I was able to bring that back to the team. We were able to sit around a table and kind of decide what everybody was, and then really just say, and so because of this, this is the type of communication I like. This is what motivates me. This is what shuts me down. Are we perfect? No, but had a lot of the petty disagreements and she's just not cool, or I can't work with this person. We've seen a lot of it go away. Having said that, my team, I just can't say enough about my team. I don't have a lot of challenges. I'm really just fine tuning and polishing. But again, anytime I read a book, and I try to read one every couple of weeks, I bring what I've learned to the team.
Love it. Chad, thanks for sharing that. I think it's the only Malcolm Gladwell book I've not read, Talking to Strangers, so I'm going to have to check it out. So thanks for
It's a
mentioning
good one.
that. What did you want to do differently from the other agencies you worked in?
I wanted to be involved. In every agency that I worked in, there was a leadership team and then there was an execution team, and the disconnect was borderline disgusting. I did not work in an agency where there wasn't some bloated CEO rocking Prada, driving a Bentley, wearing a three-piece, but then also asking juniors to edit their emails for them. You'd hear them on podcasts talking about how successful they are, but the reality is they couldn't connect to a single thing they'd actually done. Now, having said that, I've reached out since I became a CEO to 4 of my previous CEOs and took them out for lunch to just apologize for the fact that I had no clue what a CEO actually did. Okay. So my opinions of their, the disconnect and not doing anything, they were doing a wonderful job of admin. They were doing a wonderful job they were doing a job of people management, which is really difficult. But there was a big disconnect between the people that were selling to the client and talking to them in the room and the people that were executing. And what I found is that disconnect created inefficiencies and a lot of expensive time that was wasted, because we're all in billable hours here. I didn't understand why, as a sole proprietor, I couldn't be the one to sell, execute the strategy, and then communicate to the rest of the team exactly what we're going to do. And that's exactly how our agency is run. We have 3 strategists. 2 or 3 of us are in every initial meeting. I've got one right after this. I deal in brand strategy. Brittany deals in PR and communication strategy, and Brett deals in digital marketing strategy. Between the 3 of us, we create everything that's needed and then execute to the point of something needing to be pretty, because we've got designers for that kind of thing. The disconnect isn't there. Everybody's aware of all our clients. Everybody feels engaged. And even if you're not working on that client directly, you're involved in the client in so much as you're there for the kickoff. You can see the project management. We bring it up in team meetings, stuff like that. It's not a siloed agency. I also don't have a big corner office. I'm taking this call from the boardroom. We have several breakout rooms with couches and screens and phones and stuff like that. But if you come to my agency, 1,000 square feet is dedicated to just my 12 teammates sitting side by side. You wouldn't be able to walk in and figure out who's the boss and who's the most recent hired. And I find we get excellent work done that way. That was the big difference that I wanted to do, was let's be a small boutique style agency where everyone's invested and everyone's involved. And there's not a bunch of closed door meetings with leadership where you have no clue where you stand. That's really the big thing.
So it sounds
Oh,
like,
one more thing.
yeah, go
Can
ahead.
I say one more thing? There was a CEO over COVID that made an announcement that he was going to take like a $5 million pay cut or whatever, so that he could pay every single one of his employees 70K or more. Are you aware of this guy? He was pretty big in the news. They just did an update of him like a couple weeks ago, and surprise, surprise, paying people what they deserve and a wage that they can live on. Uh, Reduce their sick days, reduce their stress, improve productivity. So I did a similar model at my agency where I ensured that nobody gets hired for a wage under 70, so that they can, at the very least, live. Now, has that allowed me to bring a big bag of money home for my wife in the first year of the agency? Well, no, it was a bit of a struggle. But is my team ridiculously loyal and committed? Yeah, we have very little turnover. Everybody's pretty happy here. I think we check in regularly. So I think that's something I wanted to do differently too. When you come in here, I do not negotiate to get you down to 45 or 50K to work. We're all adults here, and you started a wage that you could be proud of and live on.
So it sounds like, I mean, the you didn't love the hierarchy that was going on in some of these agencies, and there was that disconnect. There is a misconception on CEOs in general sometimes where, well, what is that person even doing, right? But what did you
Stressing.
learn? What did you learn from some of those people that you worked for on being a better CEO after the fact? You're like, okay, you were actually doing things behind the scenes that I didn't realize. What did you learn about being a better CEO?
I learned about everything that goes into keeping a business open. So, working with accountants, working with lawyers, working with landlords, working with cleaners, like it's really just an exercise in managing people and being a cheerleader for your team, which is the best CEOs, I think. They recruit the best talent and they get the hell out of the way. Um, I always view that as, oh, they're making the most money and they're getting someone else to do the work. What I didn't look at is the first few years of starting a business. There's nobody super comfortable, even if you're getting some funding. You owe those people either money or they get to influence your business. Hiring can be incredibly difficult. Letting people go, again, every single person I've let go has been in the best interest of my team and my clients. Nobody has ever been surprised, and no team that I've had has ever cried once we've let somebody go. It's usually okay, good, and then we try to do that quickly once we understand that there's no fit. Um, so, uh,
On recruiting the best, you mentioned,
yeah,
Chad. I know culture is very important to you. Talk about the hiring process at Agency Atlas.
sure. So I've stopped hiring strangers straight up. I typically only hire people that I know or someone else knows and recommends to me. I've found that resumes are absolute bullshit. And I've learned to hire slow and fire fast. So, and it's not a reflection of their talent. It's more of a reflection of their fit. We say two things here. We've got a sign up here. It says the two things you need to be successful at Atlas. You got to be talented and you got to give a shit. And if you can do those two things, you'll be a wonderful fit at Agency Atlas. But the reality is, the talent thing is easy. Here's my portfolio. I've been doing this for 10 years. Can I design a pretty picture? Yes. Can I write a wonderful story? Of course. Can I develop a website? Yes. But how you do it, what your approach is, how you view a call on Friday afternoon when you've got better things to do, but the client clearly has a need. I don't chain people to their desks, but I certainly chain them to our clients. We don't work with unreasonable clients. So if something comes up, we expect people to jump. We take all those things very seriously. So that's the fit that you'll find here. Everyone's pretty talented and everyone genuinely cares about the success. And again, that ties into the profit sharing model as well. If you see somebody slacking off or you take your sweet time on something, you will see the effect of that on the numbers and it will trickle down into what you get. So hiring the best people is just really about the fit. The best people aren't necessarily the most talented. Although my team is very talented, it's about fit in the room.
Talk about culture for a second. And what are
Mm-hmm.
some of the things you do as a company that helps maintain culture?
Okay, well, I'll be pretty blunt here. So we don't have a dress code. I think that's standard. We don't
You
have
should
set
make
hours.
everyone wear a pin every day. That
I
should
know,
be.
but then I wouldn't be unique. Uh, this is a 45-year-old man trying to expand his personality in some way because my wardrobe is otherwise quite boring. But our culture is around what I really try to create is a comfortable, advantageous atmosphere for truly talented people to succeed. Now, how do truly talented artists, and I don't have anyone out there that isn't an artist, succeed? Well, it's not by working 60 hours a week. It's not even by working 40 hours a week back to back to back to back to back. When you come to our office, there's a bar, there's couches, there's TVs, there's video games, ping pong and foosball and all this stuff. Not because we want people to come here and party, but because I force people to take breaks. We have a rule here. If you're not spinning around staring at the sky every once in a while in a day, what are you even doing here? You're clearly not really thinking about anything. So that culture of uh, uh, giving them what they need to be successful, but then not micromanaging them and letting the results speak for themselves. We also allow people to work anytime from anywhere. Me personally, I'm first thing in the morning. I've got young kids I like to take to hockey and pick up from school. So I'm here at 5 a.m. and I leave at 3. I have some people that come at 7, 8, 9, 10. I have people that work evenings. Obviously, I have a development team outside of Canada. They typically make themselves available, but they work different hours. What I'm saying is I try to let people be talented the way that they're talented in a way that makes them more comfortable, and then just judge them on the results. You want to have a drink? Even we've got cannabis clients. You want to go out and have a hoot and then come back in, perfectly legal. And I know that some of the best creativity, some of my best, I'm going to say all of the best artists are typically influenced by some kind of substance at some point in time in their life. I don't fight that, And not only do we not have drug tests or anything, but you do whatever the heck you want. As long as you don't offend others, continue to put in the work and have a showcase of giving a shit. And I guess not offending others falls under that. We allow a lot of flexibility for how you do stuff.
You have some interesting stories, and we'll get into a little bit more about how it works to work with you in the company. But talk about S&P Global.
Oh, sure. Well, S&P Global was really a reflection of our talent and efficiency in our process. So my partner, Robbie Gilchrist, he's our creative director and the gentleman that I've worked the longest with. He's also part owner of the company. He had a relationship with somebody when he had a client, Halliburton. And this woman, Jenny, just a wonderful client to us, but specifically to Robbie, has kind of come with, brought whoever she's been working with at the time to Robbie and I, for strategy, design, stuff like that. In the first few years of Agency Atlas, she was living in Houston, but came into Calgary for a visit, looked up Robbie, and they went out for a coffee. She explained her frustration with having multiple agencies of record, but they were just going through a merger, 2 other companies that they were bringing in the commodity space. They had 3 huge teams coming together, and they needed to come under some sort of marketing banner. And they had for 6 months gone back and forth with 2 specific agencies. Where they sat it was Thursday, and by that Monday they had to launch whatever it was that they were going to do. And she said, I don't mind the 2, but they're not great, and we'll probably just take what we like from both of them. And so Robbie said, very boldly, I might add, well, what if we could come up with a campaign for you? And she kind of laughed and she said, well, Robbie, I should have come to you from the beginning, but I need it by, Saturday. I'd have to approve it on Sunday and launch it on Monday. I just don't think there's time. And he said, well, let us worry about that. 72 hours later, we came up with the We're All In campaign. It had several wins. Obviously, the sentiment makes sense, but it also allowed the IN prefix for us to work with a bunch of things. We're all in this together. We're all innovated. We're all interconnected. Exactly, you can see it there on the screen. So it gave us a huge sandbox to play with, and they liked it so much they made us their internal agency of record for a ton of projects. We did a few $100,000 the first year, and it built on that ever since. So I just thought that was such a wonderful example of, if you need us, we will put the evening and weekend in. Not only are we willing, but we're able.
Talk about the process for a second. I mean, first of all, coming up with something like this is not easy. Coming up with something like this in 72 hours is not easy. Coming up with something in 72 hours that the client likes, that you like, is difficult. What's the process look like when you go to in the room to come up with something?
I can't tell you my process. No, I'm just kidding. It's you know what my process is? Let's review the brand documentation and then let's come up with ideas that check every box. It's as simple as that. The problem is a lot of people do not invest the time and effort into having brand guidelines that a marketer like me can work with. The reality is I don't have to throw my idea over the fence in the dark. All I have to do is understand who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and then make sure whatever I do checks all the boxes. Then we do some discovery on whether or not it's original, and heaven forbid the URL is already taken or something like that, right? There's some due diligence, but it's as simple as me and my strategists or anyone from the team that I think has some experience. Oh, so this mug, this is another, you can't write if you can't relate. I stole that from Beck, I think the Loser song. But it's so true. If you don't know anything about the client or the industry, or you haven't had, immersed experiences with what they do, how the heck are you going to represent them better than anybody? So we really try to pull from our team and from external, anyone that I have that's got experience. We've got a tourism client. Well, I'm going to go to my Skull network and bring some tourism experts. We've got a beer or cannabis. Well, I'm going to go and talk to some of the people that I've met in that industry and make sure that we get their feed. If I can get the insight I need and I can get the brand guidelines that I want, and I already explained to you that we're incredibly creative, it's not tough. You know what's tough? Building a house. But again, the people that build a house, if they've got a good process, would tell you that it's not that hard.
And you also did talk about the Taboo show.
Oh, yeah. So I actually met Daryl, who runs the Taboo show. So for those that don't know, the Taboo show is a national, I think it's just in Canada, but it's pretty much all the provinces. And it's just a sex show, exhibitors.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, stuff like that. So one of the things I do when I hire people is I ask them to check the boxes of clients that they wouldn't be willing to represent. There's only really
this is it right here.
That's it right there. Yeah. There's only a couple things that I refuse to represent. Obviously, I'm not interested in ignorance or racism, and I'm not a big fan of cigarettes. So those are the two things that, because I own the company, I've just already checked those boxes off as no-goes. But literally everything else, as long as they have a story to tell, is something that we were willing to consider. So when these guys came to us, admittedly, they had just handed their money over to general media bookers. I won't throw them under the bus right now. But for the money that they were spending nationally, they were not getting the return that they wanted. And frankly, all of their ads looked like, the back of a magazine that I'm sure you've never seen, but some of us saw in the 90s that we found in the woods, or our older brother showed us, that kind of feedy ad, the Craigslist feel. And their attendance, we felt, was suffering based on the message that they were sending. So what you're showing right now is a website that we fine-tuned but did not create from scratch. We're actually creating a new one from scratch. What we've done is all of their advertising. So we've got a multi-$100,000 spend going across Canada, and we've tried to attract the everyday freaks to this. Not just the people that are out partying at 3 a.m. and wear their inks on their sleeve, but the moms and dads and couples, and even like elderly folk, or specific communities like LGBTQ that were kind of tacked on the side but never really focused on. We managed to break their audience group. Instead of just saying people that want to have sex, we broke it down into several audiences and got real specific in the messaging. But we also had fun with it. Again, we do a ton of cannabis, alcohol, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. If I can give these type of projects to my team, it brings a special joy to see somebody that's got a dildo store and grinder up on their screen because they're really trying to nail the message. I'm just a big fan. So we've had a ton of fun with it. Sales, even in the first couple months, have been wonderful to see. And I'm really looking forward to showcasing this as a case study at the end of the year of what you can do when you genuinely give a shit about your messaging.
Yeah, when I'm looking at it, it kind of is like a Circus Olay type of feel to it, like almost like a Las Vegas show. So
it's fun.
And you mentioned cannabis. Talk about Boxcar for a second and what you did there.
Sure. So when I was a sole proprietor, I got big into cannabis. In 2018, I joined a lobbying group that worked with the government and some of the rules. I worked with a lobbying group that said things to the government they should consider and they ignored. But either way, we were engaged. Some of those recommendations are coming to fruition now after a few years of failed. But yeah, Canada, I did a lot of cannabis. I started with retail. I opened, upwards of 35 stores, sold new leaf cannabis, or worked with the team that sold new leaf cannabis, to Meta, which is the biggest retailer in Canada anyways, and probably coming over there to the States as your legalization trickles in. And I named a bunch of products and worked with a bunch of LPs. I had a blast for a few years, but it wasn't the most fun as things got kind of stringent. Laws were difficult, and even getting your products in was really difficult. So people didn't have money, and guess who doesn't get paid when there's not a lot of money? So when we started, we basically said we weren't going to do cannabis. Having said that, this group came to me through a good friend of mine and his mentor, who I know quite well, and they just don't fail. They asked if I would be willing to make an exception, and I said sure. At the time, they were named Armstrong Cannabis. They're out of Armstrong, British Columbia. Armstrong, British Columbia is known for being the first city or town, I guess, to introduce a railroad boxcar. Again, when we found that out in the history and started working with them to tell their story, we really saw the connection with the boxcar. It traveled, it kept things fresh, it was innovative, it had interesting look. So we steered them in the direction. Also, BC boxcar, BC cannabis. It checked a lot of those boxes I was telling you about. So we came back to them with a proposal to change their name to Boxcar Cannabis. And then the big win on this one was we would do what graffiti artists do to boxcars as a way of doing a strain car. So our strain cards were really train cars, and anyone that's been by a railroad that's got cars that have been there for a while knows this theme. So we expanded on it. These are a little bit simplified, but the point of sale in the store, and the reason they're simplified is if you know anything about the cannabis industry, once you get a product approved, there's general guidelines it has to meet. But then once you actually get the batch to store, it's very specific measurements that you communicate at the point of sale. So our point of sale box cars are actually incredibly detailed, very colorful, very unique, and tell the story, everything from the flavors to the origins to the differentiators, terpenes, cannabinoids, etc. So I thought it was a super fun project, as did my team. So we did take this one on.
No, I love hearing your thought process because it seems obvious now, but coming up with those ideas and really digging deep into kind of the origin and what that city is known for, kind of I could see how everything kind of gets extrapolated from there. What are, you're in your company really, and you mentioned this before, help these companies tell great stories and obviously get the word out on what they do. What are some of the mistakes you see companies making on telling their story? Because when they're coming to you, you're dealing with, okay, maybe they just named it after the city, right? And they haven't thought beyond that. What are some of the mistakes you see that you have to, fix or improve on?
Short-sightedness, I think, is the biggest one. A lot of people really enjoy marketing. It's fun. It's pretty pictures. It's, the realization of everything that's been in my head. And now it's something I can proudly wear on my shirt or jacket or badge, and everyone knows what we are and that we exist. But what they don't typically do is look into the next 5 years of challenges that they're going to face. So I touched on it earlier. It starts as simple as, is this unique? Or are we going to get down the path and find out that our name is actually taken by someone else? I'll give you a wonderful example. Peloton is one of our clients, but it's Peloton Energy Services, not the Peloton bike brand. And the reality is Peloton Energy Services have been around 20 years longer than the Peloton bike brand. Now, I'm not going to say that our Peloton is more recognizable than their Peloton, but I can tell you that their Peloton brand had to make a ton of submissions. They were not able to get the URL. In fact, they've offered, I think, upwards to $1 million to get Peloton.com, but they can't get it. There's some messaging and trademarking situations that they have come up against that they can't deal with. So again, it's as simple as understanding what's already out there and making sure that you have a path to success. The second one is people just not investing in a proper strategy. Now, one of the ways that we make that easy is we don't charge a ton for that original strategy. If you're willing to come in and get engaged, that's part of the relationship build. If you see how we did that process that I just walked through and you like it, you're going to be sold. And my money comes from the long-term relationship, not from the, hey, pay me to see how I think. So that's typically what I see is agencies are like, they come in and say, well, we have 50 grand. We don't want to spend any of it on strategy and you're not doing strategy for free. So let's just dive in. And then 6 months later, they're backtracking. So that's the biggest challenge. I don't like to crap on other people's work. I find if somebody really truly takes time to figure out their brand, regardless of who they work with, it's probably going to be pretty good. The people that come to me that aren't doing well are ones that completely skip that process.
Yeah, I could see here. I'm looking, Chad, on Peloton.com and didn't realize, this is a oil and gas energy, there's data management stuff that owns this.
Yeah, they're a great company too. We just got started with them a little while ago. We did their, I did an internal staff onboarding document for a friend. They saw it, they liked it. It kind of had a humorous, fun approach. So we did that for them. And then they saw how we work. And a year later, they approached us and said, let's give you a ton more business. So that's a really exciting one for us this year into next year.
I love it. First of all, Chad, I just want to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing the journey, the lessons, and the stories behind it. I want to encourage everyone to check out agencyatlas.ca to learn more and more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. And Chad, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.